I'm going to throw some of those questions to one of the top experts in all of this, someone who's also been writing extensively on this and other cases, Sanjay Hegde, senior advocate of the Supreme Court. All right, Sanjay, probably one of the most gruesome cases of serial killings that we have seen in this country. And just look at this as an example of delayed justice, being denied justice, right? 2005, 2006 are the killings. 2009, a sentence of death. 2014 is when the execution is supposed to be carried out. The Supreme Court, the President, they've all rejected mercy petitions. And now, in 2023, they're acquitted. Somewhere you have to worry about the process of justice and the process of investigation. How can these things happen?
Well, this is an extreme case, but yes, the system of justice does get extremely delayed. What happens is that you may have a reasonably quick trial. The trial happens very often in the district wherever the episode has happened. Thereafter, when the matter goes to the high courts are all clogged up. The systems are clogged up. The litigation there is clogged up, and depending on whether somebody is out on bail or not on bail, you end up with an appeal being heard very late. In this particular case, it does appear that there were 2 or 3 trials. In one of them, there was a sentence. That sentence was not carried out due to other reasons, and in the meanwhile, these appeals continue. And in this set of appeals, now the court has looked at the prosecution evidence very closely and basically told the prosecutors, you did a lousy job. You did not collect evidence as was required by you, required of you by the law, and as a consequence, the only thing to do is to acquit the man. This is possible because what would have happened is that once they arrested the man in one case and decided to charge him with all the murders in that area or try to identify all the bodies, it was somebody in the system possibly got lazy. They said the evidence in one would suffice for the rest. And that's not how it is done.
Right. Now, the judiciary often gets the rap and the clogged up systems. Why are things taking so long? Now, in this case, of course, the acquittal is also because they're questioning the entire nature of the investigation. So it has to be said that there doesn't seem to be any system of accountability when it comes to investigation. If there are police officers or other investigators who bungle the investigation, what happens then? Because we're having it both ways. Sometimes people are being let off because the investigation wasn't properly done. On the other hand, people sometimes rot in jail for a long period of time when they're actually innocent. In either case, justice is being denied. So at some point, there should be some accountability for whoever's responsible for this.
Yes, because a lot of stuff gets compartmentalized. People do their investigating job, and then they just pass it to the court system. There's nobody who sees a case through from start to finish. More likely, it is going to be the defense lawyer who's continually on the case. Whereas on the investigation side, the prosecution side, people keep changing. And there will always be a tendency to blame the predecessor. The man who investigated is more likely to have gone out of the system either through retirement or death. And since there is nobody to blame, nobody gets blamed.
So, Hegde, if you look at this particular case, which was once considered an open and shut case, allegations of torture, allegations that not enough evidence was collected properly, allegations that things were not done in the proper manner, going from one investigating officer from another. I am still coming back to the basic question. How do you find a solution for this? And is the answer in fixing accountability in some form or the other?
See, the solution actually would be, first, you would have to trust your prosecutors. You would have to, especially in gross cases, you would have to have a prosecutor who would be associated with the case right from the stage of the investigation. Somebody who could then game the process or visualize as to what are the questions that will be asked by a court, which is asking tough questions. Very often what happens is that the prosecuting team thinks that it has done its job by filing a charge sheet. And the charge sheet is often nothing more than a compendium of an undigested mass of documents and witness statements. What is the story of the prosecution which will ultimately result in a conviction and which will, where all the proof required is laid out in the manner as required by law? There is no stress check of anything that the investigators find. That has to be the first thing. Secondly, not every case needs to go to court for a trial. The system of plea bargaining, which is prevalent abroad, would possibly be a much better situation in India if only people and administrations could trust prosecutors. Because prosecutors right now do not get into the system of using their discretion and saying, okay, if you plead guilty to we will suggest lesser time and get convictions. Here, everybody seems to factor in the thing that the ultimate result will arrive at some uncertain point in the very distant future.
Yeah.
So therefore, they do what they think is sufficient unto the day and evil thereof, and then forget about it.
And let's face it, that system actually works very well for someone who is guilty. If the person is guilty, they're happy with the situation. But 30 years from now, 25 years from now, you may or you may not get punished. Witnesses could die, something else could happen. But if you're innocent, then it's really terrible because you have a shadow hanging over your head, or even worse, you could be in jail for something which you haven't done in the first place.
Absolutely. We also have a system of bail in this country where bails are not given, or the thumb rule of judges is that, okay, if you've sort of served 3/4 of your sentence, maybe we'll give you bail, or you've served half your sentence, maybe we'll give you bail. So it runs havoc with the presumption of innocence.
Wow, it looks like a really sad situation. Let's hope something gets done now. What do you think is going to happen in the Nithari cases? Will there be any justice in a sense there? I guess you could argue that they have done X number of years in prison, so that's some punishment in case they're guilty. It's not punishment in case they're innocent. But what do you think is going to happen here?
No, as far as this particular judgment is concerned, I fully expect the prosecution to appeal. In the appeal, it's hardly likely that Mr. Pandher, who's got out after 17 years, will be asked to go back to prison while the appeal is finally heard someday. Kohli remains in prison. So it is possible that the court might say that, okay, we'll consider the appeal. As to when that consideration will happen in the Supreme Court, I despite being a 30-year practitioner in the court, I can't make a forecast.
All right, Sanjay Hegde, thank you so much for joining us with that particular perspective.